Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel, and in this video we're going to continue our adventure creation series. I've been going through the 10 possible scenarios or scenario seeds we might call them, in the basic book, which is part of the BX, which has of course been reorganized into OSC, which I know is very popular, so I'm sure a lot of people watching this might be using that book. I'm going to use my original books because I like the way they're laid out. I'm used to them, but all this information is in OSC. So last video, and I'll put a link here, we talked about escape and evasion. And the reason why I did that was because in this video, we're going to use that as part of our process here. You don't have to have watched that video to kind of follow along here, but you'll get a lot more deeper information there, and you're probably going to want to jump over there after you watch this if you don't stop now and watch that first. However you want to do it. In any case, the idea here is going to be that, let's look at the scenarios before we get ahead of ourselves. Okay, so we've used 6 of these ideas already. This is number 7. And, well, it's not number 7 because I was rolling randomly at first, but there's only 3 left. We have investigating a chaotic outpost, we have fulfilling a quest, and we have escaping from enemies. Now, this suggests the escaping from enemies is that classic, you start off captured in a dungeon with no weapons and you have to kind of fight your way out. That can be really fun, but I feel like that's done a lot, and I wanted to do something a little bit of higher level adventure. This is going to be like 4th, 5th level adventure, and I wanted to use the Hexcrawl because we haven't really done that in any of these adventures. Most of the adventures I've had some travel, but it's been very basic. We haven't used the rules. So we're going to go into the Hexcrawling rules and all that kind of goodness to make this work. So let's jump over to my iPad. So I made a quick outline of what we're going to need here. Obviously, we'll change things as we go, but this is number 7, which is escaping the enemies. Trapped behind enemy lines, start as prisoners. Cavalry breaks the lines, that was my first thought. Escape into the wilderness, hex crawl, evade enemies, get back to safety. The party's going to start off having been part of some kind of a force that got broken. You know, they came to wipe out some kind of evil, which we'll figure out in a second. And now they're retreating back the lines. You know, they failed effectively. And now they're kind of on their own. So they're not going to be without weapons. They're not going to be without armor, but they are going to be without most resources, right? Because if you were just part of an army fighting in a war, you probably wouldn't have like spikes and garlic. I mean, I don't know, maybe you would have garlic, but you know, so I would definitely have the player characters, if you're doing this as part of a campaign, you know, kind of build up to this point where they're not going to need to have their own rations and stuff like that, because have that being provided for them up to this point. So when they run to the wilderness, they're going to be not have that stuff, which is part of the survival thing here. And I mentioned in my other video, and I'll say it again here, even if you don't normally track that kind of stuff and you find it not to be interesting, for this adventure, and let the players know this, it's going to be important and part of the fun. So you're going to want to use that stuff a little bit. But anyways, back to this. Okay, we're going to have a starting ruler, which I'll talk about in a second. We're going to do an outdoor movement. I made 3-mile hexes because I figure in most cases people are going to have armored people, plate mails, chainmail. So their movement's only going to be 6 miles a day. So if I do a standard 6-mile hex, we're just moving 1 hex a day, which I didn't think was that interesting, especially when you start talking about, you know, movement being slowed down because they're going through mountain passes and stuff, which if you were doing a long journey with not much going on, then you could just say, okay, well, instead of a day, it takes you 3 days. But in this case, I don't want to do that because I want this to feel like a chase. We're going to talk about starting in a random direction because, they were part of a war party. We're going to talk about the initial evasion, how they get followed, if not, getting lost or not, food supply check, obstacles, and then finally random encounters. So we'll work all this out and that'll create our adventure. And I'm going to quickly go over how I'm going to make the map. I'm not going to spend a long time with that. And I'm going to then run through like a couple of turns of this so you'd see how it works out. All right, so let's start with another section of the expert book that I think a lot of people don't delve into, the encountering a castle in the wilderness section. So this is pretty cool. If you go all the way back to original Dungeons and Dragons, this is where this comes from, and they've got a lot of information about it because, of course, that game when they first started was really about just exploring out in the wilderness, and they were using a game called Outdoor Survival, and when they would encounter certain areas, they would be castles, and then they would roll to see what's in that castle. We already know what our situation is here, so we're not going to worry about the pursuit and all that stuff and how friendly the people are going to be. We know they're an enemy. Let me jump over here to the expert book. We can see that it talks about the castles, whatever. The reason why this is important for me is because it's going to tell me what kind of soldiers are going to chase us. So we've got fighter, magic user, or cleric that could be running the castle. So I'm just going to roll a d6, you know, as a d3 and see what we got. Okay, we got a 3, which is basically a 2. So we've got a magic user. They are anywhere from 11th to 14th level. So I'll roll a d4 plus 10. Okay, 12th level. So we have this 12th level magic user that is running this castle. And if we look, their patrols are heavy footmen. So let's jump over and see what that means. Okay, I'm in the specialists and mercenaries section of the expert book. You can hire alchemists and stuff, but also if we look down here, we can see we have troops and we want heavy footmen. Okay, heavy foot, it says here, is chain, shield, and sword. Okay, simple enough. They can actually be available as dwarves, elves, orcs, or humans, obviously. You know, if you want to flavor it and make them orcs or elves or whatever, you can certainly do that. Although if you make them elves, be careful because then you might want to worry about if they have spells and such like that. So I'm probably going to stick with them just being human in this case, but our patrols are going to be 2 to 12 men in chainmail armor with shields and swords. So let's jump over and make a note of that. So we've got this magic user, 12th level. Patrols are going to be 2 to 12 heavy foot, which are basically one hit die, right? They are chain and shield, sword. We're going to assume since they're the patrols that they kind of have a range and maybe there's like outposts and stuff like that. So we're not going to worry about their food and stuff because they're in the range of the castle. But that's what they have. So if they encounter these guys, they're going to be heavy footmen. That's going to what they're going to fight as, right? Okay, so you might be saying, well, a 4th or 5th level party that's going to be a decent size, even 12 first level heavy footmen is not really going to be too much of a challenge. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a little bit of some flavor here. We've got a 12th level magic user, so we can assume that they might be using some kind of scrying ability. So what we'll do is we're going to use something that I've talked about before in a different way, which is the idea of using like a countdown timer, right? Which we talked about. They have them in Index Card RPG and stuff like that. So what we're going to do here is when the party encounters this group, the wizard will have a chance of scrying. And if the wizard scries and sees what's going on, they will assist in some way, which again is going to now be a high-level magic user, which is a problem. So what we're going to do, let's jump back over again. So the way I like to do these kind of mechanics is instead of throwing a die on the table, you can do that. What I'm going to do is each round I'm going to roll a d6, adding 1 to it each round, each consecutive round. And when we get a 6 or better, the wizard intervenes. So let me write that up. All right, so you could leave this open. It could be maybe a random monster check is made or a random monster shows up just completely randomly from the area, aggressively attacking anything there. You know, I mean, this is going to be a chaotic wizard, so maybe it doesn't even care. It'll even kill its own troops, right? So we could do something like that. That could be pretty deadly and interesting. Or maybe we should look at some of the spells that the high-level wizard might have. So let's take a look. All right, taking a look at the 12th level magic user, and of course they could have any kind of magic item we want to give them as well, but they've got spells all the way up to 6th level, so we could actually have them use any spell. So let's look at the spells. So we're mostly going to look at the higher level spells because I feel like those are the ones that are probably going to be more likely to help. We've got things like Control Weather, which could be interesting. Invisible Stalker, that seems a little bit slow. The higher level spells, actually Stone to Flesh or Reversed could be pretty deadly, but maybe we'll stay away from that. But if we look at 5th level spells, we have things like Animate Dead, so if they've taken out some of the men that could come back, right? We've got Cloud Kill, which could be super useful. We've got Teleport, obviously, which could be interesting. Transmute Rock to Mud could also be interesting to mire the players down. Wall of Stone. So we've got some different things that we could do here with the wizard intervening. So maybe what we'll do is we'll say there's a 50-50 chance they'll cast a spell and a 50-50 chance that they will just, a random wandering monster will happen. Not a check, but it'll actually occur. So let's write that up. So this way it makes this a little bit tougher. They want to avoid the patrols because they don't want this wizard coming down on them. Okay, simple enough. That gives us a little bit of meat, something to work with. Now let's talk a little bit about moving outdoors and getting lost and stuff like that. Let me take a second to just, if you haven't watched the other video, to talk about hex crawling and kind of outdoor adventuring. Keep in mind that with these adventures, each turn, if you will, is a full day. So we're narrating large swaths of time as the party's moving around. When they go into combat, you're going to zoom in and do that, several rounds, so a minute of intense fighting, and then it's going to zoom back out. Now, of course, as you're playing this at your table for fun and stuff, you can go down and play little moments, you can play role-playing, all that stuff can be added. I'm just kind of going over the overview of this thing, but you could almost think of this as a zoomed in, or I should say a zoomed out look over the world with the characters kind of just moving around until something major happens. So when we look at our movement, we're going to look at the movement based on daily movement. All right, when we look at our movement here, we see movement per turn, 30, 60, 90, 120. 120 is an unencumbered, unarmored person, right? So if the characters are, let's say there was a party full of magic users not carrying much, they could move at 120, which would be 24 miles a day. 90 is typically like your leather armor, or if they're just carrying some like a bunch of treasure, but they're not armored. 60 is an armored character. So the party's always going to move at the slowest movement rate of the group. So we're looking at 60 is probably more likely. So they're going to move about, on open land, full speed, they're going to move about 4 hexes a day at a 3 mile hex. That's where I think I'm going to make this thing. I might go to 6 mile hexes, but I'm thinking 3 miles is going to work for me. But this is the reason why. When we look down here, we can see that, again, clear trail grasslands is normal, but forest, hills, desert, broken, you're already looking at 2/3 of the movement rate. If you look at mountain, jungle, swamp, you're half. And when you look at roads, they can move a little faster, which I think is really nice. I'm not going to really have any roads in this, I don't think, but that's pretty good. So we might want to make it so that it's divisible by 3, actually. So if we figure their movement is 12, what we might want to do is do 4 mile hexes. That way they're basically moving 3 hexes a day during normal. I guess no matter what, it's going to work out where it's going to be a weird number unless like the hexes are very small. So we'll see when we get to the map. But I'm thinking we'll either go 3 or 6. If we go 6, then they're going to basically move 2 hexes a day. They'll move 1 hex a day if they're in the mountains, jungle, and swamp. And if they are moving through the forest, hills, desert, and broken, they're going to move 8 miles, which is basically like 2 1/3 hex. So it depends on what they're moving into, right? And you can have mixed terrain. So we'll play around a little bit with this, but we want to simplify it as much as possible. This is more or less how it works. Okay, they don't give specific rules for obstacles in the movement path, except to say they could slow you down. But I just want to cover this section really quickly. If we encounter things that are obstacles, we're going to slow down the party. So that might mean I'm probably just going to say they either have to stop and go around it, or they're going to they just end the movement for the day. That's probably how I'm going to do that. So when they encounter that obstacle, they end the movement for the day. Now, at some point, we'll just figure out where the obstacle is in their path. Characters have to rest after 5 or 6 days rather of travel. So if it goes more than 6 days, they're going to have to stop. Otherwise, they're going to have penalties. And of course, getting lost is a big thing. And we'll jump into that when we get into the actual hex crawling rules. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so like I mentioned, you can see a little chart over the side. If you get lost, you roll in a random direction to see where you go. The chance of getting lost here is over on the left. So if they're traveling through clear grasslands, there's only a 1 in 6 chance. If they're traveling through the desert, there's a 3 in 6 chance they might get lost that day. If they get lost, we roll randomly, they go in that direction. Their full movement, and then we determine the next day, the next day they're like, we want to go north again, then you roll again. So that's basically how that's going to work. If the players are looking at a map, if you want to do this on a virtual tabletop, this can be trickier. They're going to have to not metagame when they're lost, basically. It just is the way it is. Or you can have 2 separate maps, which is what they suggest here, but I feel like I would probably do this theater of the mind anyways. They don't really know where they're going, so it doesn't really matter if they're lost, except for when we tell them, that they need to retreat off the field. Maybe you should determine, roll a d4. This is a good idea here I'm coming up with. We're going to roll a d4 in the beginning, and we're going to say safety is to the north, south, east, or west, right? We're going to do that. That way they know, okay, we should be moving south then. And they can kind of work that out in their heads that generally we're going south or generally we're going north. So let me make a note of that. But before we do that, let's just jump over to Wandering Monsters because I want to cover a couple things here. So if we look at our wilderness encounters, aka Wandering Monsters, what we've got here is, depending on where you are, again, it's a d6 roll. If we're in the clearing grasslands, if you roll a 6 on a d6, you have an encounter. Now, it does talk about doing it multiple times per day, but I think in this situation, I'm just going to do 1 per day. 1 encounter per day, and what we'll do is we'll determine, based on the direction they're going and what hex they're going to be in, which hex it might happen in. So let's say they're going to move 3 hexes. We're going to roll a d6 to determine which of those 3 hexes the encounter could happen in, and then we're going to roll there to see if there's an encounter. And then we're just going to use the tables that are here. If you roll something that's completely ridiculous and you don't want to use it, then obviously you could just not do that, or better, in my opinion, is to go through the list ahead of time and cross off things that you don't want. You don't want to have any dragons, cross them off ahead of time. Don't roll a dragon and then change it, because that just is confusing at the table, at least for me. I'd rather just go with what the numbers are. So that's how I would handle that part. That's pretty simple, but let me add these little rules here. Okay, so again, we're going to come here and we're going to say At the very beginning here, we're going to say we have the starting ruler, outdoor movement, blah, blah, blah. Roll a d4. You can do a d8 if you really want to. I think I wouldn't want to keep it that precise, though, at the start to determine which direction is safety. Now, I'm going to say that you could make this ramp up the difficulty here by when they're lost, assuming that they don't know what direction's which. But I kind of feel like adventurers are going to be able to look at the stars and stuff and figure things out. So if they stop for the night, I kind of reset them knowing the direction or not based on the lost thing. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for instance, they were like, okay, we want to go south because that's safety, and you rolled randomly, and they got lost and they went north. If they say south again, I would just let them actually go south. I wouldn't, assuming they don't get lost again, I wouldn't be like, well, okay, they think that direction's south, so they're really going north because they're wrong. I wouldn't do that, although technically I think that's how it's supposed to work. I feel like for this particular adventure, that's not what we want to do here. Now let's talk about food and supply. We can see this down here. I haven't done it there, and we'll kind of work this whole thing out. I'm going to jump in one more time to say this because I know that a lot of times people don't like rations. They don't like these things. I think that it's useful to use in this adventure. If you don't normally use it, again, just let your players know. I hear all the time, my players won't like that. If you just let them know, this is this adventure, this is a survival adventure, don't worry, we're not going to always make you track rations. But you might find if they do it, that they actually like it. So let's talk about foraging. All right, so there's some pretty simple rules for foraging here. Characters traveling in the wilderness may attempt to search or hunt for food either to extend their normal supplies or to prevent starvation. So basically, they are going to roll as they're walking. It doesn't slow them down. If they get a 1, they get enough food to feed 1 to 6 men for 1 day. Good to go, right? If they don't, then they don't, right? It says here about stopping to hunt. I'm going to change this up a little bit. You can stop to hunt, and there's a 1 in 6 chance that they encounter an animal on the animal table. So let's talk about how we're going to change this. So I think that what we're going to do here is we're going to, there's several different ways you could do it. You could just decide by terrain what the chance is to forage, or you could do this, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say if they are moving at a normal pace, that's their chance. If they want to subtract 1 from their movement, they have a 2 in 6 chance of finding food. If they subtract 2 from their movement, a 3 in 6 chance, 3 from their movement, a 4 in 6 chance, etc. This way, they can basically give up all their movement to have a really good chance of just finding food. I think the hunting thing, if they say we're going to stay in one spot and hunt, then you can do that normally. But otherwise, I'm going to make a higher chance of them foraging each day. That way, they're not going to starve per se. And what we're going to do is we're going to say every 3 days they go without food, they lose 1 hex worth of movement. Every day they go without water, they lose 1 hex worth of movement. And for the water, we're just going to say there's a 50-50 chance that they find water even if they find no food. I think that's the simplest way to do it. Let's take a look. Food supply check. Now again, this is going to be for the whole group, so it's just 1 roll. 1 day supply for D6 people. So they might find some and it's only enough for one of them. They might find some that might be more than they need. And again, they can track it. Food. 1 in 6 with normal movement, increased by 1 in 6 for each hex of movement they give up. Water, automatic if food is found, 3 in 6 if no food. No water can be found in the desert unless food is found, so that's kind of a little bit of a thing, because if they don't find food, I figure they get water from the food, right? And then for every 3 days without food, they lose 1 hex of movement. Every 1 day without food, they lose 1 hex of movement. I'm thinking I'm going to just do this movement more or less in hexes instead of using the actual movement. It makes life easier, and we're going to talk about that in 1 second. See, as I'm doing this, my mind's working. Let's talk about obstacles for a second. So it doesn't say how to deal with that. And of course you could just put them on your map, but I kind of like the idea of this being random and having the dice matter. And we'll talk a little bit about how this is going to play out. So what I'm going to do is there's a certain number that you need to roll for wandering monsters in each section. So let's say in the grasslands, you've got to roll a 6 on a d6. Well, if they roll 1 less than that, so they roll a 5, instead they will encounter an obstacle. And this obstacle will stop their movement for the day. So we're going to, again, we're only going to roll once, and we'll just see which hex things occur in. So at the beginning of the day, let's say they're going to move 4 hexes. What we're going to do is we're going to roll d4 to see where the obstacle might be, or in random encounter, and then we're going to roll to see if it occurs. If it does, then it occurs in that hex. That way, it's various times. It's not always at night. It's not always in the morning. It's while they're moving. So let's note that down. Okay, so roll a die to see which hex the obstacle or encounter might happen in, and then just roll the appropriate amount for that space. If you are one less than that, there's an obstacle, the travel stops for the day. This then assumes that they pass the obstacle somehow. They find a way around it, whatever. It doesn't prevent them from moving the next day. It just stops them from that day. You know, so that can be unfortunate. If it happens in the first hex of that day, they're only going to move one hex. Now, for the random encounters, we're going to use the tables from the book, but I'm going to have 50% chance that any random encounter is the people that are chasing them, right? The support group. So let's do that. Okay, simple enough. If an encounter is rolled, 1 through 3, it's the magic user's patrol. 4 through 6, use encounters from expert. Keep in mind this is a hostile war zone when rolling reactions, and patrols will always be hostile. So in other words, maybe give some kind of a negative on the roll or something to that effect. All right, let's make a quick map. I'm just going to show part of it, obviously, because that can take a while. And then I'm going to run through a couple of moves in this module, and we'll see how the thing works out. I'm using a couple pieces of software here, which I will put links to in the description. One of them is called the Crawler. It's a dice roller, and it is from Purple Sorcerer. And the other one is something called Hex Kit, which is what I'm building the map with. You can see I've built most of the map already. The other thing I'm going to do here, and you could very easily just make up whatever you want in the hex to make sense, but in the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a section on creating a random wilderness, and I've been using that to build this. I'm going to quickly show you that, and then we'll build a couple of hexes, and then we'll run through a few turns of this adventure to show you how it works out. All right, so I've got this is page 173. It's Appendix B. And what we've got here is pretty simple. We look at the type of space that we're in, so let's say plane. Okay, you can see that plane. And then we roll a d20. If we rolled 1 through 11, the hex we're going into is plane. If we roll 12, it's scrub. If it's 13, it's forest with a chance of hills, etc. Then what you do is, once you go to that hex, you roll again and you just continue this process. Now, of course, it gives some ideas here about ponds and these kind of things. There's also a chance of inhabitation. And what I have decided, though, for this, because I don't want them running into a lot of villages and stuff, because I see this as still kind of a one-shotty thing. Obviously, you could add what you want. What I see myself, what I've been doing is, if I roll a ruin, which is a 15 or 16, I use it. Or if I roll a single dwelling, I use it. Because I feel like that could be kind of an interesting encounter, some kind of hermit or something, somebody on the run. But if I roll like a city, I don't put it there. Oh, and I also keep castles. I figure that castles are strongholds of the magic user. If they encounter a castle, there's going to be the magic user's forces there, obviously, and then you deal with that when that happens, right? So let's, I'm going to reference this. So I'm not going to keep it on the screen. I'm going to show you the Hexcrawl thing, but I'm going to reference this as I go through and we'll do it. So let's take a look again at HexKit. So I'm going to start, I've been doing these things on kind of a diagonal. So if you can see, I know you can't see my mouse. Or maybe you can see my mouse. Oh, you can. Okay, so you can see my mouse right there. I'm kind of jiggling around. In this center, that kind of dark castle, that's where we're starting. But where I'm going to go is over to the right here. This grassy hex is where I'm going to start. I'm going to go diagonally down. That's a good size there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the crawler. Excuse me, there's one left. Now on the top, it rolls 2 d20s, then 2 percentiles. I also sometimes need a d10 and a d20. So I'm going to do 2 d10s and a d20 for some of the random results that we can check. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit roll. So I rolled a 20, a 13, and it looks like that the 13 has an 11. So when I reference the 11, it's a city, so I'm just going to ignore that. So if I'm starting in the plains, a 20 is a depression. Oh, interesting. So when you roll a depression, it's the same landscape. It's just got a depression in it. And then, so I'm staying in the plains, and I also rolled a 13, which is a forest. 1 and 10 also includes hills. So I'm going to look at that. I will get a 5 on the D10, so no hills. So I'm going to come over here to my hex kit builder, and I'm going to put 2 hexes of grass. The first one is going to have a depression in it. So again, I'm not doing a tutorial on this so much. I'm not even an expert on it, but I'll kind of show you how this works. I added those hexes. You saw me do it over here. It's on the base level. I have a features level as well. And I'm just going to find another place where there's a depression, that one right there. And I'm just going to add a depression to this one. Now, the way I've been doing this, it doesn't say this. I've been rolling a d3. If I roll a 1, then it's just the 1 hex. If I roll a 2, 2, then it's also the hex to the left. And if I roll a 3, it's also the hex to the right. So I'm going to roll a d3 over here, which is that one. I rolled a 2. Okay, so it's going to go across to the left. So we got that. That's going to slow their movement, obviously, right? That is an automatic obstacle, basically, a depression, right? If anything, yeah, I would say that's an automatic obstacle. That's going to stop them. Now, again, that's why you don't want to necessarily show the characters this map. But I will say this. What you can do, which is kind of neat, is you can actually turn off the different layers, and that way you don't see all that. So, again, this is Hex Kit. I did the Kickstarter for it a while back. I'm sure it's still available. I will put a link in the description. So let's just do one more to show you. So we're in Grasslands. Again, and I'm going to roll. I got a 10 and a 3. We're going to look at 10 is the plains again, and then a 3 in the plains is the plains again. So I'm going to do, what's kind of nice about this is, and again, I don't know, I've seen lots of people do videos about the realism of how we should do hexes and this and that. I'm not going to claim I know anything about that, but because I'm doing this, it actually, a lot of it does seem to make sense. If I really was going to use this a lot in my world, I might go in and tweak some of it. Because again, if you're doing larger hexes, like 6 mile hexes, it's not unreasonable to say, well, that mountain is a mountain range, a small mountain range, but a mountain range nonetheless. Again, the 2 percentiles didn't encompass anything, so let me do one more. 11 and 1. Okay, so we got 2 more forest hexes. I'm sorry, grass hexes. Do another one. 7 and 4. Okay, I wanted it to be different. That's why I did that. 7 is that, and then 14 is rough. So now I've got a rough hex. I just come over here, and I go like that. I got one more hex. Let me just do it. 13 from rough is hills with a 1 in 10 chance of forest. So no, because I got a 2. So I'm going to go over my hills, and I'm going to do that. Simple as that, right? I'm building this whole world out here. And again, I think I'm going to do 4 hexes per day. In theory, if they just went the right way, they would actually get off the map in like 2 days and not encounter anything. So that is a possibility. It's pretty unlikely, but it is a possibility. So you might want to tweak the map a little bit when you're doing this to make sure that can't happen, maybe. But there is obviously chances of getting lost and all of this stuff. So, you know, we'll see how it works out when we make adventures. That's why we play test them. Okay, I finished the hex map, but before we run through a couple of turns of play, I added a few things to the document. So let's take a look at that. Okay, I broke the movement down into hexes to make it a little bit easier, make it a little more board gamey, if you will. Outdoor movement, the hexes are approximately 3 miles. Unarmored people can move 8 hexes per day. Light armored, which would be like leather armor, 6 hexes, or armored 4 hexes. And again, you move as slow as the slowest party member, so in most cases, they're going to be moving 4 hexes. I put down what things cost, so a clear hex, for instance, is 1, a forested hex would cost 2, a mountain would be 3, and you collect it upon entering it. So if you move, like, let's say you have 4 hexes of movement, and you move 3, and the next hex in front of you is a mountain, you can't enter that, because you would need 3 hexes of movement to do that, so you'd have to do it the next day. So you may end up losing hexes some days because of that. Now, I drew a procedure up here so we can run through it, and we'll go through that when we actually do a turn. With the food, I said you start with 1 day of water. I want to note that. And also, hexes with pawns always provide water for the entire group, plus 1 extra day, right? Because that's what they can carry. We figure it has a canteen on them. I also added some castle stuff here, and the reason why I did that is, let me just quickly show you this. This is from original Dungeons & Dragons, which of course is kind of where this all comes from. I didn't see this in Expert, but I also just kind of breezed through it, so maybe it is in there. But it talks about how when you are near Castle Hex, there's a chance of an encounter with it. 50% chance if you're in the hex with it, 33% if you are within a hex away, and if you're 2 hexes away, 16%. So in other words, 1 through 3 on a d6, 1 to 2 on a d6, or 1 on a d6. So I just noted that here. So if the party travels near the castles, they might run into a patrol there, and I noted that this patrol would be full strength. So in this case, 12 armored foot, I think is what they were, if I'm not mistaken. So that's basically what we've got here. We've got a procedural kind of process here. You could even do this kind of as a little bit of a solo play if you really wanted to. But let's go through a couple of steps. I'm going to bring the map up. We'll kind of do a couple of moves on it, and I'll show you how this works out. Okay, so I exported the map as a JPEG. I have it up on the screen here. I've also got my expert book open. And we're going to run through a few turns of this adventure to show you kind of how it's going to work out. Now, kind of in the center of the map, a little bit more than halfway up, you can see the center square we're going to start in. Now, remember, we're going to pick a random hex that we're actually going to start in. So I'm going to roll a d6. We're going to go clockwise basically from the top. So 2. So we're going to actually start to the right-hand side. Okay, so we're going to roll a d4 to say which way is safety, right? So I rolled a 1. So that means north. So the party knows that north is safety, and they're starting in this hex just basically 1 hex east of the starting castle. Now remember, we're going to start with an evasion check. So here we're going to jump over to the expert book. The party is 5 characters. That's what I've decided here. We're going to roll 2d6 to see how many people are in the force that's following them. 8. Okay, so we look under the column of 5 to 12. We look for 8 creatures following. There's a 50% chance of evasion. So I'm going to roll percentile dice here to see, 1 through 50. They evade it. Oh, 35. Okay, they make the evasion. That means these creatures are basically out of the picture. These guards or whatever are out of the picture, the heavy mercenaries. And the party can move in whatever direction they want. Now, of course, they can't move directly north. They've got, and you're going to want to tell the party, okay, you've got to the northeast, you've got grasslands. To the northwest, you've got hills, because they can see that, right? To the south, and then kind of go through and tell what they can see 1 hex away. Obviously, the castle is to the west of them. They're going to, they want to move as far and fast as possible. So they're going to move to the northeast, they say, and we're going to roll. Since they're starting in a grassland hex, we're going to have them roll 1 die to see if they get lost. If we go over to the wilderness encounter area, we can see that on grasslands, only on the roll of a 1 of a d6 will they be lost. 1, okay. Okay, so they're lost. And they're going to be moving to the east. Now we can see there's a depression there to the east. We're going to count that as mountainous terrain. So we know that they can move a total of that, basically 2 hexes. That one counts as 3, and then 1 more to get to the next hex. What we're going to do now is we're going to determine whether or not there's a possible random encounter. I'm going to roll a d6 and see which hex it might happen in. Okay, if there's an encounter, it's going to be in that first hex. That's mountainous. We're going to look there. In the mountains, there's a encounter in 4 through 6. So I'm going to roll, and I got a 6. Okay, so there is going to be an encounter. I'm now going to roll another d6 to see if it's 1 through 3. It's more of these guards from the wizard, or 4 through 6. It's going to be an actual random encounter. 5. Okay, so it's an actual random encounter. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to roll a d8 to see what it could be. A 2. We are in the Barren Mountains Hills area, so it's a flyer. I'm going to look on the flyer table here. You've got 3 different columns. There is one for mountains. We're going to roll a d12. We got an 8. Okay, it's a manticore. All right, so the party is going to encounter manticore. We're going to look up manticore stats and we'll figure out what happens here. Okay, manticores are pretty tough. There could be 1 or 2 of them if they're not in their lair. So because it's a wandering monster, we're going to say it's not in its lair. And we're going to, I'm going to roll a d6 and see if there's 1 or 2 of them. Okay, I rolled a 4. There's 2 manticore. This is pretty serious right here. They're encountering 2 manticore. Now, does the manticore surprise the party? I'm going to roll a d6 on a 1 or a 2. It does. 6, it does not. Does the party surprise the manticore? Again. Okay, they do. The party surprises the manticore. They are in the wilderness, and when a surprise is rolled in the wilderness, you can automatically evade. The party is going to choose to evade the manticores. They're unseen. They just avoid that altogether, which is pretty smart. And they're going to end up over here in this grassy hex to the east of that depression. Now I'm going to roll a d6. They did move their full movement today. So we're going to roll a d6 to see if they found any water or food. Now, they did have 1 day's worth of food, so water rather, so they won't reduce their movement if they don't find water today, but they're going to want to find water. Yeah, I rolled a 3. No food or water. So at this point, they're 1 day. You can just start a food track here, right? They're 1 day down on the food. They're not 1 day down on the water because they started with water. So they're not going to lose any movement, and that ends the first turn. Now we start the next turn. We know they want to go north, and when they can see to the north of them that there is, to the northwest, there's mountains. They're not going to want to deal with that. To the northeast, there is a forest. Since they don't know this area, they can't, if they could see the map, obviously they'd know to maneuver around, but they don't know that. So they're going to go to the northeast and go through the forest. We're going to roll first. So they're starting off in a grassland hex. Let's see if they get lost. Oh my God, they do. They get lost again. Apparently they don't know how to negotiate in the grassland hexes. So I'm going to roll to see which direction they go. 3. Oh boy. Okay, they go pretty much the opposite direction than they thought they were supposed to be going. Maybe these grasses are tall, or maybe there's some small hills. Who knows why? But they end up going. And again, when you're lost, you have to go your full amount. So they're going to go a 1 hex. That's 1 point, and then this is hilly and mountainous, or hilly and trees. So this is actually going to cost. We're going to say 3 hexes. So 1, 2, 3, they're going to end up here in this hilly forest hex. We're going to roll to see if there's, well, that's where they're going to end up, possibly. But we're going to roll to see if there's a random encounter. It could be in either one of those 2 hexes. I'm going to roll a d6. It's possibly in the hilly or forest hex. It's a hill hex with forest on it, but I think I'm going to roll based on forest. That probably makes the most sense. Okay, so in the woods, they could encounter a creature on a 5 or a 6 on a d6. 2. No encounter, no obstacle, nothing. They end up in this hex now at the end of this day, and we're going to roll to see if they find any water or food. Actually, I screwed up because they have a 3 in 6 chance of finding water even if there's no food. So let me roll for the previous day. Okay, they didn't find water, so it's the same. Today they're going to roll again, so let's see if they find food. Again, only a 1 in 6. 4, no. If they do not find water today, though, they're going to be in trouble. I rolled a 1. Okay, so they find water, so they're still good, but they're now 2 days short on food. They are getting hungry. They're starting off in a forest hex. Now another day has gone past. Let's see what happens. Let's do one more turn. They know they want to go north. So again, they're going to go, they see that it looks like it's, maybe they were confused the last time. They don't want to go back the way they came. So they're going to go northeast, they decide. We're going to roll from a woods hex to see if they get lost, which has a larger chance, of course. So let's scroll down. In the woods, there's a 1 or 2 on a d6 they get lost. 3, they do not get lost. So they're going to move as much as they can, which is actually, because they want to know that they can get food, they're getting nervous now. They're going to only move 2 hexes, so they're going to find food for a 1 through 3. Okay. So they're going to move 2 hexes, which puts them up here in the grasslands right there. Before we do the food, though, let's see if there's any encounters. It could happen in either hex. So grassland hexes have an encounter on a 6. 3, no encounter. Let's see if they find food. They're going to find it on 1 through 3. Oh, God, they rolled a 6. Okay, they don't find food. This is the 3rd day without food. Let's see if they find water. They do find water. Okay. However, that's 3 days without food. Tomorrow, they can only move 3 hexes. The party is kind of in a desperate situation here. They might want to stay still. However, if we notice, 2 hexes away is a castle, which means that there is a 1 in 6 chance that there'll be a castle patrol that will find the party. So let's roll for that. No, 2. No castle patrol comes out. Currently, the party is getting pretty desperate, having lost 3 days worth of food, so their movement is now slowed to 3. They have found water every day, but they're getting a little bit desperate there, I'd say. And you can see how this could play out. And, again, you role play, you kind of work through it. This can be a really fun kind of, again, almost board gamey experience, but with some role play and probably some combats and running and stuff factored in. Maybe a brave party would have fought those manticores. Who knows? A smart party runs, I think. All right, so that actually worked out pretty cool. I'm going to, at some point, put this thing together in a PDF or something so that people can run it for their groups. I'm going to run it for my group. I think they're really going to like it. When I do that, I will pin a comment in this video so that you can find the link. I'll also put it in the description. It might not be before the video goes live. That's why I'm saying it now. If you have any questions or comments about this, please put them obviously in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time.